came down to this southern town last summer to show the folks a brand new way of life. But all you've shown the folks around here is trouble, and you've only added misery to their strife. Your concern is not to help the people, and I'll say again, no, it's been often said, your concern is just to bring discomfort, my friend.
Welcome to Cracker Culture, podcast for real Floridians. Please like, share, and subscribe. And visit our sponsor, Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. Farmer Joe's, guaranteed the greatest grocery store in all of Lee County. Okay, folks, as seen on television, heard on radio, read in numerous publications, a man you will thank your future self for listening to, Mr. Media Ford O'Connell, is joining us. And yes, I'm the less intellectual Smokin Joe. So, Ford, I'm glad to have you here. You called me earlier. I wanted to talk about what's going to the northern border. Before we get started, it seems like the Biden documents are coming out of the woodwork. Everywhere you turn, there's more Biden documents. And I got a little clip that I just got this morning. Let's look at this and we'll talk about it.
The FBI just finished searching President Biden's beach home in Delaware. This is tied to the ongoing probe into classified documents. Other documents were recently found at his home in North Carolina and his office in Washington, D.C. It took FBI agents nearly 13 hours to search Biden's home in North Carolina, but his lawyers say they searched his beach house and didn't find anything. The president gave the FBI permission to search all of his homes.
So what do you think, Ford? I mean, it never ends. And then I heard that they found more documents at the University of Delaware.
Well, here's the deal. So, Biden claims to be the most transparent president in history. That is a complete and utter lie. And this search is going to continue, on and on and on. And I think it's very simple. Two things that we need to know. What's in these documents and what is Hunter Biden's proximity to those documents? As for the point about, the University of Delaware, you're absolutely right. Back in, I believe it was 2012, when Biden, thought he'd run for president, he basically set up a drop box at the University of Delaware to hide documents so that they could not be used against him. And I want to really end one talking point. I love it when you just heard that newscaster say, Biden consented to the search. I'm going to tell you something. This is the FBI. If you don't consent, they're going to search anyway. So this is a ridiculous talking point overall.
I agree. You don't have no choice to decide whether you're going to allow it or not.
And that's what they keep trying to say. They say the search is complete. A new set of documents are there. We're being transparent, but then you've got the White House press secretary lying every way to Sunday. And then they say, well, we're being compliant. No, you're not being compliant. The bottom line is the FBI is going to search you if you don't say yes.
Well, and another person, I can't remember exactly which journalist brought it out, but they brought out that a lot of the information that they believe in some of those documents that were found in was exactly the information that they believe that Hunter Biden was using to, formulate his career.
Yeah, that was Miranda Devine of the New York Post, who was pointing to an April 12, 2014 email between Hunter Biden and Devin Archer over the Burisma Ukrainian gas deal. And what it appears in that email is that the information he provided came directly from classified documents. So, look, here's the thing. This is not a Hunter Biden story at the end of the day. It's a Joe Biden story. They've been using classified documents and access to political power to enrich themselves. And Joe Biden is also getting enriched, because why else would Hunter Biden pay $50,000 a month to live in Joe Biden's home?
Well, and the thing of it is, the reason it's a Joe Biden story is somebody like Hunter would never gain access to records like that without Joe Biden.
Exactly. And not only that, Hunter Biden, we can say a lot of things. He's a relatively smart guy, but the idea that he knows anything about energy and sort of the geopolitical terrain of Ukraine is insane. The reason why he's getting paid this money by a Ukrainian gas company is for exactly what you say, Joe, is because of the access to that information that he otherwise wouldn't have.
The Ukrainians are begging for more help, more money. I noticed that, Biden said he was not going to send fighter jets to Ukraine. We've sent a fortune, a boatload of cash over there. Do you think that Biden will actually not send jets, or is he going to send them through another country?
Hey, that we don't know. It appears that essentially he is for an escalation with Russia. So eventually he may send them fighter jets. Here's where Biden, what's sort of blocking that. It's not as much Joe Biden as it is Germany and other countries saying, now we're entering a dangerous point of escalation. We have to be very careful. And I think that is right. But then you add in the corruption in Ukraine with the funds that we've already sent, and you have to wonder why you're throwing money down a hole, and you're not taking a tactic like President Trump tried to do and often says is, how do we get to a negotiated settlement? Because every time we talk about sending money to Ukraine, what is the end goal? Is it to defeat Putin? Is it to protect Ukraine's borders? Or is it to have World War III? I don't know. And I think the number one question people on both sides of the aisle should be asking is, what is the end goal in Ukraine?
And I really believe a lot of people are throwing up banners that I stand with Ukraine and this. How long do you stand with something until it destroys you?
Yeah, people like to rally around symbols. And, a lot of people, from a Cold War perspective, recognize that Putin is not a great guy. Let's be honest about it. But at the same time, you're sending money to somebody who you don't know who you're sending money to, who could honestly escalate into World War III. We need to be practical, and we need to have checks and balances on what we're sending to Ukraine. But I tell you, at the end of the day, I still fault Europe for this situation. And the reason why I say that is because they gave away their energy to Russia, and essentially they were not paying for their common defense for the last 30 years, and that's why you have this situation.
I hope that something changes, because it's a shame that we're sending our hard-earned money to a country that, again, we spoke to Ukrainians that say that they have ideals that tend to lean toward the way Adolf Hitler reigned. And that's a lot of Ukrainian cliques, and we've heard that from Ukrainians.
Well, that this is still that Cold War mentality where the saying used to be, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and we agree Putin's a bad guy, but at the same time, we don't know who Ukraine is. That's right. A great point. And, at the end of the thing is, why are we sending Abrams tanks to Ukraine when we should be sending them to the southern border? And I promise you, every single day that we're focused on Ukraine and Russia is a day that we're not focused on the Chinese Communist Party. And I'm going to tell you, that is a country that can make us deaf, dumb, and blind in 3 seconds.
Yeah, it blows my mind. Well, you just brought up we needed tanks down to the southern border. So I'm going to jump on in up here to talk about our northern border, which seems it's becoming as porous as our welcome station to the south. What nationality are these immigrants that are coming from the northern border? What are we looking for? Who are these immigrants? Are they Canadians?
No, they're not Canadians. They're basically people from all over the world that are trying to get into the United States because they know that once they're in the United States, they will not be deported. Let me give you a couple of numbers here, Joe. In fiscal year 2021, Biden's first year in office, the northern border illegal encounters were 27,180. Last year was 109,000, a 700+% increase. And at the pace we're on here in 2023, we're going to probably double that. Believe it or not, it could be as bad under Biden at the northern border at the end of 2023 as the southern border was under Trump in 2020. Think about that. They know what's going on here. The reason why they're going to the northern border is they're basically saying everybody's trying to get in the southern border. There's just another way to do it. So when we talk about border security, it's all American border security because illegal immigrants know one basic thing, and that is Joe Biden is not securing the United States.
Well, when we first talked about, the northern border, I'm thinking, is it like the people from the South American countries that's coming over and they're just taking the scenic route? I mean, I don't see no Canadians coming over here looking for amnesty, Maybe, hey, you might see the Canadians coming over here looking for amnesty with that goofy little old pansy they got up there running the deal. What's his name?
Justin Trudeau. You're at look. If any Canadians are going to come and seek refuge in the United States, they're probably going to be from the province of Alberta, because Alberta is much more like Texas and Oklahoma in terms of mentality than it is like French Canada. But look, this is the whole point, is that the entire world is coming, and it's not just South Americans, Mexicans, and Latin Americans. We've discussed just the southern border alone. You've got people from 161 countries just last year, and these people are basically saying, hey, why would I go to Mexico from someplace in Europe or someplace in Africa when I could just as easily go to Canada and walk through Vermont and New Hampshire?
Yeah, we got plenty of trouble going on at the borders and with border security. We also got some issues going on in our Congress. Now, McCarthy's taking a lot of fire from Democrats for attempting to keep certain individuals off of committees. I mean, he's concerned with Ilhan Omar being on the Committee for Foreign Affairs. Quite frankly, so am I. And then you got Adam Schiff and Eric Swallowwell. Anyway, you got those two. I mean, I think that's the smartest thing McCarthy said since he's been Speaker.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think when you talk about Eric Swalwell, you have to call him Farticus after he blew wind in a CNN interview just a couple of years ago. Look, let's understand what happened here. Eric Swalwell of California was sleeping with a Chinese spy. Nobody debates that. And when it comes to Adam Schiff, also of California, this is a man who manipulated his access to classified intelligence to call Donald Trump a Russian spy, when in fact none of that was true. And those two should certainly be penalized, because when it comes to national intelligence, they are a threat to the security of this nation, because they decide to manipulate national intelligence for their own partisan use. And the idea that anyone is sleeping with a Chinese spy should probably already get them banned from Congress, let alone from a committee. So I absolutely agree with Kevin McCarthy. When it comes to Ilhan Omar, she said very disparaging things about Jews. She said very disparaging things about Israel. I'm a little bit more hesitant to block her. I would block her if somebody could prove that she married her brother. I'm a little bit more hesitant to do this because what comes around goes around. And remember why this is happening. This isn't happening because the Republicans are bad guys, from the Democrats' perspective, what they tell TV. In the last Congress, Nancy Pelosi stripped Paul Gosar of Arizona and Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia of their committee assignments because she frankly didn't like them. And then when it comes to the fake January 6th committee, they stonewalled Jim Jordan of Ohio and the gentleman from Indiana, Jim Banks, because they were really good at what they did, and they knew that they'd blow that up as being a hoax. You have to make Democrats pay a price for their treachery, because if you don't, the next time they're in power, and they will be in power again, they will do even worse. You've got to hold the line right now, and that's why I tip my hat to McCarthy.
Well, I noticed that Florida's wild child, Congressman Gates, he said that he was on the fence about Omar. He said that he, like you just said, if he had some accusations actually proven wrong, he said, but, he's going to wait and think it over, which I think that's a good idea. But, I think that some of the things that Omar said, I don't think I would want her on any committees, let alone in Congress.
Look, I completely agree with you. I'm not defending, to be clear, Ilhan Omar. I just know in Washington what goes around comes around. But What the reason why I would knock her off the committee is, one, deference to McCarthy, because you have to, show unity among the Republican Party when you lay down the law. But the other thing is, over the weekend, she was on CNN, and she basically said, and it was one of the most stunning things I'd ever seen. She said, I did not know that there were tropes, horrible, disgusting ways to describe Jews that involve Jews and money. And right then and there, I know she's lying. She's not repentant. She's going to continue to do it. And what blows my mind away about her is, fine, she prefers Islam and Muslims, and that's fine. That's America. But at the same time, the fact that she constantly undermines America as a refugee who came to Congress and potentially married her own brother, she needs to be investigated outside of her comments about Israel, because I think it would be very eye-opening for the American people to know about who sits in that house.
I'm hoping that we see a big change with the new leadership in Congress. I think that we will. I think that this is just the starting point of many more fights from the Democratic Party for whatever action McCarthy takes, he's going to get pushback from the Democrats.
Of course he is. And let me ask you this. If Nancy Pelosi was in charge right now, do you think she'd hesitate knocking off the Republicans? She wouldn't. And then she'd blame them for doing it. Republicans have to understand what they're up against. A lot of times they want to play by the rules of the game, and you've got to play by the Democrats' rules when you're in power, because if you don't, the Democrats will only move the goalposts the next time they're in power. This is about maintaining decorum in the House and making sure our government works, and the Democrats don't care. They basically want to govern from emergency to emergency and spend your taxpayer dollar and then tell anyone who questions their actions that they're un-American. That is the game the Democrats are playing.
Well, I want to talk about a few more Republicans here for a second. Over the weekend, former President number 45 was in New Hampshire, and then he went on to Columbia, South Carolina on Saturday. And this is his first campaign trip since his announcement to seek office. Now, as he's seeking the commander-in-chief position in 2024, while he's in Columbia, South Carolina, he had been approached or contacted by Nikki Haley, who announced that she thought she was going to run.
Well, as we understand it from news reports, Nikki Haley is going to announce her run for presidency. I believe it's on February 15th. Nikki Haley is not a threat to Donald Trump's path to winning the Republican nomination. In my opinion, she's more of a threat to the type of voter outside of Florida who would vote for Ron DeSantis, more of your college-educated white Republican voter, that very similar appeal outside of our home state of Florida. When it comes to Donald Trump and visiting South Carolina and New Hampshire, this was very different. He didn't hold boisterous rallies. What you saw were two events and some retail politicking within the state capitol. What Donald Trump is doing is he's going to the early primary votes and he's scooping up talent. He's scooping up people to work on his campaign in those states. And frankly, I think it's very smart. A lot of people have criticized him for not doing it the way he did it previously, but right now he knows he needs to quarter off those early states if he wants to be the Republican presidential nominee in 2024.
Well, it's interesting, like I said, and Donald, you hear a lot of people that are screaming that he's attacking Ron DeSantis and that. But, you got to put it in the realm of Donald Trump world. Donald Trump's a lot like me. He's a scrapper. He says stuff just to piss people off, and he enjoys it. I do too.
Look, Donald Trump is who Donald Trump is. That is never going to change. But I think what's happened here is during the Joe Biden presidency is we've come to realize that a lot of things Donald Trump did, not just on the economy, not just on illegal immigration, not just on energy, but also on foreign policy, are some of the best things that we've ever had. And I think that is going to be the hurdle that Ron DeSantis has to climb when he does enter this race. And that is, can you make the case that you can be Donald Trump and do the same sort of stuff without the sort of personality stuff that may rub some people the wrong way. I think that that's going to be very hard for Ron DeSantis, but I do believe that one of those two gentlemen is going to be the Republican 2024 presidential nominee.
And that's my take. If you throw Nikki Haley into the mix, that's just taking votes from one or the other of them. It's not going to.
Yeah, she's not going to win the nomination. I think that she thinks that she could be the vice presidential nominee. I just don't see that with Donald Trump. Can't speak for Ron DeSantis, but I think he's probably seeing it in a very similar light as well. She is somebody who adds to the conversation. She's somebody who'd be great in a cabinet. I just don't know at this stage that she's going to do it. But remember, when people run for president, they're not always trying to win the nomination. In many cases, they're running for another office or for another job outside of government. So you got to keep that in mind as we hear about other people, whether it's Mike Pompeo, you name it. Remember, not all of them are running to win. A lot of them are running for another position on the ticket, the administration, or another political office entirely.
Well, the norm, there's a lot of controversy anymore over DeSantis, and especially over his implementation of laws to protect Florida's curriculum from agenda-based ideologies. And he's really under fire for trying to do what I guess conservative, or what I say people with common sense, thinks is the right thing.
You couldn't be more right. If sane Americans knew what was going on in Florida public schools and American public schools across this country, they would go crazy. And I think education is a great issue for Republicans in 2024. And what Ron's done in Florida is absolutely fantastic. And what he's pushing back again is this idea of intersectional wokeism. And he's absolutely right. This stuff has no place in Florida and America's public schools. And it's about time that the average American and Floridian wakes up to exactly the nonsense the Democrats are pushing on our children. And the Democrats know exactly what they're doing, because they are trying to groom, if you will, up here, the next generation of Americans to be little green socialists.
Well, Ron has come out against this new AP African American Studies, and I'm going to play a little clip here and let you see this. Let Ron talk about it for a second.
Because I think people want to see true academics, and they want to get rid of some of the political window dressing that seems to accompany all this. So that's no longer going to be in the state of Florida, and I think we probably are the first state that's actually leading by example. But I can tell you those bureaucracies are not representative of what the people of this state and the taxpayers of this state want.
I want to be very clear, the administration does not dictate any curriculum for local schools. That is not something that we do here, but there is something that we do want to comment. It is incomprehensible that to see that this is what this ban, or this block, to be more specific, that DeSantis has put forward. If you think about the study of Black Americans, that is what he wants to block. And again, these types of actions aren't new. They are not new from what we're seeing, especially from Florida, sadly. Florida currently bans teachers from talking about who they are and who they love, as we've talked about many times here in this briefing room. They have banned more books in schools and libraries than almost every other state in the country. And let's not forget, they didn't block, be more clear, I want to make sure I'm using the right word here. They didn't block AP European history. They didn't block our music history. They didn't block our art history. But the state chooses to block a course that is meant for high-achieving high school students to learn about their history of arts and culture. And it is incomprehensible again.
The state of Florida is the place where woke goes to die.
I love Ron. Look, now, she can say whatever she wants to about what he's done. And, there's nothing in any studies for math or art or music that has like queer theory or any of this thing to do with your sexuality. That's not in no music class I ever took.
Look, Ron DeSantis brought the facts, and I tip my hat to him. I have for many years now on this point about driving the woke out of Florida schools. But let's take it from the White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. She's lying. She's misleading. She's using the exact same playbook that they used during the "Don't Say Gay" debacle, which had nothing to do with not saying the word gay. It was about what was age appropriate. And now she's trying to create a narrative. Because remember, most people who don't live in Florida have no idea what's going on. Okay, and she's trying to create a narrative that somehow Ron DeSantis is like George Wallace standing in the schoolhouse door. It's absolutely despicable what the White House is trying to do. And what's crazier is the media allowed this to go on. First, it was the "Don't Say Gay" bill that had nothing to do with that. That's what they called it. You and I know it's parental rights. It was 7 pages long and never even mentioned the word gay. Secondly, we saw this with Disney. This is how the mainstream media seeks to distort exactly the good works of Ron DeSantis because they want to basically paint him into Orange Man Bad Part 2. That is what is going on. Unfortunately, what Ron is doing is fantastic, and I really question the backbone of other Republican governors across this country, particularly in my former home state of Texas, for not following his lead. Because what Ron DeSantis is doing with curriculum is what every other governor in this nation should be doing, regardless of party, in terms of reviewing it and saying, is this age appropriate for children under 18? And they're not doing it. In 2020, it was parental rights. Now the fight is over curriculum, and I promise you, if Republicans ever get the ability to talk about this subject, which the media doesn't want them to do, they are going to bring in a whole new set of voters that otherwise wouldn't vote for the Republican Party.
Well, Jean Pierre made a comment right when you started talking about how Ron didn't allow teachers to tell who they were. Look, when I grew up, her name was Miss Applegate or Miss Jones. I didn't need to know who her significant other is, and my child don't need to know now neither. I don't want my child knowing if you had problems learning what gender assessment was. Now, let me tell you what my opinion gender assessment was. When you're born and the doctor smacks your butt, he looks in there and he says, you got a thing or you don't. You got a boy, you got a girl. It's assessed. We don't need no teacher trying to reassess genders to our children.
But this is what the Democrats do. They change the meaning of words because it's the Marxist agenda. They talk about acceptance, but they're basically saying if you don't comply, you are un-American. And what you're talking about is absolutely right. You're either a boy or a girl. It's very simple. It's biology. The rest of this stuff is woke nonsense. And that is the whole point. That's why they move from sex to gender. Everything is the same. Look, you and I talk about this all the time. What happens? It was illegal immigrants. Now it's undocumented. Now it's just people looking for a place to go. No, that is nonsense, but that is what they do. And unfortunately, as we talk about many times over, people have busy lives, so they tune in and out. And if you tuned out from about 2018 to now, you're like, what the frick is everyone talking about?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the only person's got a right to assign gender is God, and I'm not going to argue with him.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly, my friend.
Well, now this has spurred another controversy because I want to talk about New College in Sarasota, and you know that's a very liberal college, 500 students. They're very LGBTQ friendly. I'm going to show you a little clip here of what just happened there.
The college that the legislature thought about just mothballing or folding it into UF or USF or something like that. It's not been able to have the enrollment that you would want, the test scores. Forbes magazine did a ranking of all our publicly funded higher education institutions, state colleges and universities. They said New College was the worst return on investment of any other university that we're funding. How many times have you had $15 million going into the kitty so that you're going to be able to recruit faculty immediately? You're going to be able to make a really good difference. You're going to be able to offer scholarships for students who are high performing.
So this is Ron talking about what's going on at New College. Now the students and some of the faculty, they're in outrage. They fired Board of Trustees President Patricia Oker, And they replaced her with former Commissioner of Education Richard Cochran. And now some of these board members are getting death threats.
Look, as Ron pointed out, this is a failing institution that also seems to dub as an indoctrination camp. And the fact that, he's pointing this out and it's controversial is absolutely insane. That is his job. You've got to recognize what's going on from a dollars and cents and also an indoctrination standpoint. And when Ron puts pressure on New College, he's absolutely right to do it.
Yeah, I watched a lot of this controversies going on, and I wasn't, when I talked to you earlier, New College wasn't something I planned on speaking on. But then I seen a local activist stand up, which this local activist is one of those that anywhere there's controversy, it's kind of like Al Sharpton. If it's got anything to do with Africans, whether it's true or not, he's there. Well, so is she. Her name's Sarah Parker. Now, Sarah Parker is an advocate for women's voices of Southwest Florida. Well, they're having meetings with the faculty and they're having meetings with the students. She shows up. As far as I don't know if she's alumni of this or what, but she shows up to one of the meetings. And she says, well, you're promoting, in essence, don't want to say it's a direct quote, but she made the comment that they were going to promote a right-wing agenda and all this, and we're going to allow like Oath Keepers and Proud Boys to come in. Well, while Rufus swore up and down that's not their agenda. Their agenda is for everybody to feel safe, and she will say the names. And that's the thing. They want to hear you say Proud Boys, but you don't sponsor Proud Boys or Oath Keepers. I don't understand why that's such a big deal. I can't say that I wouldn't say that I sponsor any of them. I'll say them by the name, but I ain't going to say it because Sarah Parker and her set of extra large teeth told me to.
Well, this is the game of the woke hustlers. This is what they do. Every time they accuse you of something, they're actually doing it themselves. And I'll be totally honest with you. When you look at some of these curriculum advocates on the left and everything else, it's also a ginormous grift for these people. They are in there to make money and to scramble absolute logic and muddy the waters. And that's what we've gone from the race hustler of Al Sharpton to the woke hustler of folks like this. And that's the whole point. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, that's the entire grift of the Marxist agenda in today's kids.
Well, I just think that people who follow these activists, and I mean, they are radical, and no matter what, I mean, maybe I'm considered a radical activist at the school board. I don't know, but I'm not one of these people that thinks it's an episode of Bad Santa, and I'm Thurman Merman. I didn't say his name. His name was Thurman Merman.
Yeah, you're talking about accountability and good governance. What these woke activists are talking about is fundamentally changing the meaning of words and turning conventional wisdom upside down and saying gravity doesn't exist. And I'll be honest with you, the woke hustlers are as big a threat to the future long-term sanity, not only of Florida, but also of America than the Chinese Communist Party. And it's time to call them out. And unfortunately, for the last 3 decades, the Republican Party has ceded education to Democrats. And this is where the new battleground is when it comes to society.
Well, it just seems like when people like Sarah Parker show up, that's the first time you start hearing about death threats. And that causes me reason to take a pause. If Sarah Parker hadn't showed up, would anybody have been threatened? I mean, it's a group of effeminate men and bullyish women. That's what that college is.
That may be, but they also allegedly use thuggish tactics as well while hiding behind what they talk about or open-mindedness. It is unbelievable the type of things that these folks will do just for the woke hustle. They will intimidate and bully people. We see it all over the country. It's not just in Southwest Florida. We see this with Antifa in Oregon, a whole bunch of different groups. And the difference is the Democrats only call out violence when it's violence that doesn't suit their political interests.
It's beyond me, the thought pattern of some of these people. And you know, Florida, we stay a hotbed of stuff for people to talk about. And one thing that's hot right now is the constitutional carry or permitless carry, which will be decided on March 7th in the legislative session. Some people are saying that we're going to get something like this, but a watered down version of it. I mean, what is your take on what's going on with the constitutional carry?
Well, right now up in the legislature in Tallahassee, they're discussing what is known as House Bill 543. And I think what's eventually going to happen is that Florida is going to become the 26th state to allow people to carry concealed loaded weapons anywhere without permits. I mean, let's stop in the debate. Everyone hears constitutional carry, concealed carry. What are we talking about? Very simply, we're saying, can Floridians exercise their constitutional rights without a government permission slip? And the fact that we already don't have, constitutional carry in Florida is very, very concerning, considering that I do believe that we are the #1 state in the country when it comes to concealed permits. So again, this is where Florida's behind the times. 25 other states have done this. The fact that we haven't done this, and I've supported this myself, is absolutely insane. It makes me question our commitment to the Second Amendment. And here's what happens up in Tallahassee, and I'm not going to call out names on the Republican side, but basically they like to pick and choose which constitutional rights they decide to enforce. And unfortunately, that's just as bad as the Democrats.
Well, now, some of the people here in Florida that are against constitutional carry, who want to throw rocks and run, crying that it's going to be cause for more stand your ground shootings, which I'm okay with that. Personally, if there's more stand your ground shootings, I'm okay with it. Because I can promise you, if you hit the Smokin Joe Nation facilities and you're not supposed to be here, you're going to get embedded with lead.
I think a sheriff in Florida recently made that point when there was some looting going on. But you're absolutely right. Look, you and I know very simply, the criminals don't care what the laws are. And when you take away Second Amendment rights from Floridians, you take away their ability to protect themselves, their home, and their family. And that is the underlying basis of the Second Amendment. Whenever, it's very simple, it doesn't matter which amendment is this. In what time ever, when the government has had more power and the people have had less power, are the people safer? And again, this is all about we the people, to your point.
Well, Ford, I want to jump on down, and for my last little part of the show, we're going to talk about Lee County. And this is a little touchy subject. Over the weekend, former Mayor Marnie Sawicki had come to Lee County for a book signing. I had been in the talks with Marnie, and we had already agreed that I would interview her. Now, Marnie is a Democrat, and I explained to her in the beginning that I was a conservative, and I knew I'd get a little pushback for doing this interview. There's a reason I've done this interview, is because I don't care if you are doing corrupt things as a Democrat, corrupt things as a Republican, corrupt things as a constitutionalist. If you're corrupt and somebody else has the information, I want to hear it. And if it's credible information, I don't care who it comes from. And if you don't like it, I don't care that neither. So during this interview, she explained how then Oasis Charter School Democrat school board member Samuel Fisher fought against an audit at that school. He was on the board. Now, not only did he fight against the audit, he then fought against releasing the investigation's findings. And then he decided in an attempt to gaslight the public, and the former mayor's bedfellows were used as a diversion. Why are all of these school boards afraid of audits? Why do they not want people to look into what's going on?
Because they want to maintain power, because they know that if people look into what's going on, you bring about transparency and you discuss the mishandling of public funds, everyone's going to be thrown out. And they just hope that essentially they can stonewall and the public will lose interest. It's truly unfortunate because, to your point, corruption does not know a political party. There's corruption on the right and there's corruption on the left. And when we don't call out corruption, the people lose.
Well, and it seems like a Democratic diversion tactic. Like they're trying to gaslight the public, and this has not only happened from Democrats, we're getting it from Republicans, and I don't understand when the people's going to say, "Wait a minute, let's look at this." In this investigation, what come out, and I've just got a copy of the report, and I'm going to it. There was 18 findings of mishandling of public funds. And to the current day, there is no procedures or policies for people to seek legal retribution here. They stole, well, only stole. There's $1 million that's unaccounted for, that Sam Fisher and others in a small clique that were school board members for this Oasis charter school didn't want us to know about. They don't want us to know where it's at.
Well, that's exactly the problem right there, just based on the allegations alone. When $1 million goes missing, Lee County residents should be concerned, and political parties should be the last thing they're concerned about. And the fact that there's no way to go beyond the allegations, at least right now, legally, it should be really concerning, because if you look, it's the same thing I tell criminals over and over. It's the same problem why crime's rising across the country. If you don't hold people accountable and they don't fear the consequences, they're only going to do it more and more often in a bigger and bigger scale.
Well, on last week's show, I kind of talked about how I brought up the fact there was accusations that Sam Fisher was trying to influence the future elected superintendent position. And I ain't gonna make no doubts about it. When we talked to John Albion, several other, I have had more than one person tell me that they are going to appoint Spencer Rhodes. That's what they're looking. And now, when I heard that about Sam, about this deal, he's going out talking to these principals, something clicked to me last night. There was a Cape Coral REC meeting last night, and one of the new members that was sworn in was Richard Leon, who was a former school board member who led the gaslighting attack on former Mayor Marnie Sawicki, and it rises to the suspicion that him and Sam acted together with others to, hide this, where this money went. It gives me reason to wonder, why is Leon joining back up in the Collier County REC? Are we fixing to have another attempt to gaslight our constituents?
Well, that's the one thing about the establishment. They just regenerate in different places, and unfortunately, it goes back to the same point. When you don't hold people accountable, they're going to continue to block the transparency for it. And again, we're going on allegations, but they're allegations that seem to have a lot of merit. And unfortunately, they're going to look for ways to stonewall to make sure this never comes to light.
Well, folks, we'll have a lot to look into. I'm sitting here poring over all the findings of the 18 discrepancies, and I want to know more about it before I talk much more about it. So we'll maybe readdress this next week. I'm sure I'll have plenty more to talk about here locally after I look into some of this paperwork.
Well, You're absolutely right. You know, the whole point here is transparency and bringing these things to light. And the fact of the matter is, in Lee County, when it comes to the school board and the mishandling of public funds, it seems to be like everyone's with an ostrich with their head in the sand. And unfortunately, we know things are not copacetic. And when you do things like this, it brings it to light and brings people's attention to it. And I think that that's a good thing. We have to remember their allegations, but at the same time, this seems to be commonplace throughout Lee County.
Well, Ford, I'm going to go ahead and end it. I know you got other commitments and stuff. Folks, you can locate Ford O'Connell at his website, fordoconnell.com. You can also see him on a lot of other shows that probably get a lot more viewership than this one, but I do appreciate his time. Please like, share, and subscribe. We love you, Florida. Love, peace, and Gator Grease.
Yeah.
I'm speaking up. It's time for somebody to listen up.